for the delay, I try to introduce our third speaker. He does not need an introduction from me. He's very well known in Sri Lanka, very well known overseas. He is one of the most senior journalists, very, very active human rights activist and social activist. No other than Mr. Hilmy Ahamed.
Thank you very much. May peace be upon all. It is indeed a pleasure to be here, and I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. As we have a global audience, I think I would like to set the stage of Muslims in Sri Lanka, the historical background, and to the present day. Muslims have been living in this country for over 1,200 years. And they came as traders from different parts of the world, married local women, and settled down, and were very highly respected immigrants at that time. The different kings honored them with land and wives, right? And they settled across the country. We are all descendants of those Arabs and other immigrants who came into Sri Lanka. We have had a wonderful past. I would like to say that the Sinhala Buddhist community are caring, loving, understanding, and to a large extent have been our brothers right along until very recently, where some extremist Buddhists, right, have started a hate campaign against the Muslims and other minorities. Until the civil war ended in 2009, Muslims were basically a loved community because they did not sort of side with the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam or other separatist groups. If they had done so, the country would have been certainly divided. And of course, you see, the Tamil community sees that as one of our biggest drawbacks, or that, you know, that we never supported them. But on the other hand, we are a community which is spread across the country, scattered in every part of the world, every part of the country. And, you know, there was absolutely no way that, you know, the Muslims could have sided with any party, whether it's Buddhist or Hindu Tamils. So I think we remain neutral. But with the end of the war in 2009, May 2009, the euphoria of that war victory drove some of the racists to start thinking that they had finished off one minority, so they need to finish the other minority, the Muslims. Muslims are presumed to be wealthy and affluent, but you know, the majority of the Muslims are way below the poverty line. Of course, there are about 10 to 20% of Muslims who are very rich, and you know, the mostly Colombo-based rich Muslims drive around in the most fancy vehicles, and people assume that every Muslim is rich. But if you go a little deeper into Colombo, almost the entire slum dwellings are majority Muslims. If you take the number of COVID deaths happening in Colombo, it's getting close to 75% of all dead. And the reason, one of the main reasons, is that congested living of the poor Muslims in urban centers. So it is only a myth that Muslims are rich. And but of course, you see, Muslims' living style is slightly different, and whatever money they earn, they live a comfortable life. They may be poor, but they don't bust their money either in gambling or alcohol. Right? The priority is food and clothing, so they look better than the other. Having said that, the continuous hate campaign that started in 2009, it started off saying that Muslims should not be allowed to have halal food, and of course the Muslims uh, don't need a certified halal packaging, because Muslims know very well where we can get our halal food, and we have done that for 1,200 years. But the export companies, and the processed food that we started consuming in supermarkets needed this labeling, and that is why Muslims were forced to issue halal certification mostly to non-Muslim countries. But of course, you see, this was turned against the Muslims. If the Muslims had voluntarily given up the halal certification, Sri Lanka would have lost billions. Right? Even tea, which is exported from Sri Lanka to the whole of the Middle East, mainly, right, needs halal certification. So if we had not uh, given that certification, Sri Lanka and we as Sri Lankans would have lost billions on billions of dollars. Of course, you see, the extremist or racist, a small group of Buddhist extremists, right, mostly led by the Saffron Brigade, as I call them, because absolute majority of the Buddhist priests are kind, caring, and they have all what is there in Buddhism. But there is a few in the Saffron Brigade, right, who have been basically targeting Muslims from 2009 onwards. And all the rioting, all the physical damage to Muslim economy is basically their target. They think that Muslims control the economy, so that economy needs to be destroyed. In all the riots, they start burning up businesses first, and then they go on to burn houses. There's not many murders as such, but the target is the economy. So it continues. It continues as their priority. Muslim this thing, and Muslims have started living in fear. Right? I would like to go back slightly to my school days. Surya also studied in a school very close by. And for us, we never knew what the religion of the boy seated next to us. Right? We were all brothers, religion or religiosity or even ethnicity never crossed our minds. We grew up as brothers. They will visit us, we will visit them, and whenever we went, I think we were offered better halal food than what we would get in our own homes, in non-Muslim homes, because the parents of our friends made sure that nothing they served is against our religion. That is how we all grew up. And it is so sad to witness the segregation which is happening to my children's generation. My son, when he was in grade 5, came back home one day and said, "Dada, I'm not going to that school again." And mind you, he was studying at one of Sri Lanka's premier schools, Royal College. And I said, why son? He said, no, Dada, all these boys are writing on the blackboard saying halal epa.
Mr.
Right,
Hilmy
mind you,
Ahamed,
this is,
you have
yeah.
1 more minute to go.
Yes. Okay. So I mean, this is the tragedy that has befallen us, right? So, but you know, we as Sri Lankans have no other place to go. Some of you may have gone and settled there, right? I am somebody who lived in the West, came back to Sri Lanka because I love my country more than anything else. I've traveled extensively and I've never come across a country like Sri Lanka. Right? So for me, this is home. This is where I want to be buried. And that is the struggle we had. And one last thing about the burial. So everybody has spoken about it. But, you know, I mean, this is beyond science. There's absolutely no science in the forced cremation. Right? It was an absolute racist ideology that they practiced. And today they're asking us to go hundreds of miles, and alhamdulillah, you know, at least we are getting the chance to bury. But you know, if they had forced us to bury in Iranathivu, that would have caused a huge conflict, right, with the Tamils and the Christian community there. And I certainly think, right, the Iranathivu island was chosen by design to cause a rift between the Tamil community and the Christian community. Right. Thank you, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions that may this thing. And one last, give me 30 seconds. One of the persons had asked a question: why are we not talking about Katankudi, the mosque massacre, and all that has happened to the Muslims during the war? We certainly do. We certainly do. But you know, this government, the Sinhala government, has today embraced all those people who murdered that 600 policemen, drew their blood out, those who murdered Muslims inside the mosque, right? The Sinhala government has embraced them. So the person who questions should ask, right, his or our government to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Hilmy Ahamed. That is a wonderful presentation. I cannot find a question because you covered up almost every subject. The halal food, you brought up the subjects very well, what it has to be done, how the government should have interfered and sorted out. And as you said, the government has to play a huge role to educate the masses from bottom up regarding the COVID-19 spreading through the water. And you know, breathing in the jungle can spread the disease, and halal certification, how the foreign exchange will be affected by our, if we don't interfere with that. I think that and also the most important part you brought up about the Sri Lankan Muslim community. I do not know anybody check the ancestor DNA. You know, I happen to check myself. You know, my first cousin, one of my first cousin is Ashraf, and my second cousin name came as a Narayan, and my third cousin is a Punchinilame. So where are we coming from? We are not from the export. We are not planted in Sri Lanka. We are Sri Lankan blood. We belong to that land. We are nobody other than a Sinhalese and Tamils. That land belongs to everybody, equal rights. That's what we have to preach. And whoever preaching the majoritarian regime or racial hatred, they need to understand all these people who live in harmony in Sri Lanka for such a long time are Sri Lankans. There's no superior race over another. Thank you very much for your time.